And we're live.
All right, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Where's the Funding, hosted by the Fiber Broadband Association and sponsored by Broadband.money. I'm Gary Bolton, the president and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association, and this is our 8th episode of 2023. This is a 12-part series designed to help you understand, navigate, and obtain matching funds for broadband grants. The NTI BEAD program requires broadband grant applicants to come to the table with a minimum of a 25% matching funds and a letter of credit upfront with the application. For many small and non-traditional providers and communities, this might sound daunting, but it doesn't have to be. This 12-part series is designed to help you understand how and why meeting these requirements can be straightforward. Last month we had a great session where we discussed tapping municipal markets with Chris Perlitz, the Municipal Capital Markets Group. And if you missed that, you can go to the FBA website under events or go to broadband.money.io and watch the replay. Today on Where's the Funding, we'll be discussing matching funds for rural electric co-ops and telcos with Darren Farnan, the Chief Operating Officer at United Fiber. Darren has worked for United Electric Co-op since 1994 and serves as the General Manager of United Fiber. Darren has also served in roles as Chief Development Officer and Energy Services Manager for United. Darren's led the development and operations of United Fiber Networks, which has grown to 3,200 miles of fiber, 54 employees, and $25 million in annual revenue since turning up their first fiber customer in 2013. So Darren, you'll have to correct me if any of those are wrong because I picked that up from the last time we got together. Currently, United Fiber is approaching 25,000 combined residents and commercial fiber customers, and Darren received his BS in Business Management in 1991 and an MBA from Northwest Missouri State University. And Darren served as the chair for the UTC Utilities Broadband Committee from 2018 to 21, and has provided numerous national presentations for the Fiber Broadband Association, CALX, UTC on the United Fiber business. He's involved in many local organizations, including economic development and civic organizations throughout the service area. So welcome, Darren. And for our audience, please put in your questions in the chat as we go, and we'll work them into our discussion. So Darren, other than some challenges here this morning, before we get into matching funds, let's start with a quick recap on how and why United Electric got into fiber and what you perceive as the positive impact that fiber broadband business is having on your electric business and the communities you're serving.
Sure. I just want to make sure you can hear me okay, Gary. Everything good there?
Perfect.
All right. So I appreciate it. I said out of all the numbers you put out there, the one thing I'll update is from our last time we spoke is we just hit 30,000 subscribers this month. So we made some progress since the last time we spoke. So we're excited about that. And that's obviously a big milestone. But to your point, we really started off, what really got us into this business was the funding opportunities that we had back in 2010 with the original American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And that's, we had been we'd been in a direct TV business. We had been in the wireless and satellite internet business and saw that, our membership kind of with the introduction of video and things like that our membership needed more than what we were able to provide with some of those services. And we applied for basically a grant loan fund of about $21 million for some of our rural substations, a portion of our service territory. And we were able to get that. At that point, about 90% of those customers could not get 4x1 service. So we started off there, and is what kind of gave us the springboard into where we are today. But really that $21 million in those rural areas, which was about 5,000 homes passed, is really what got us started, never with the vision of being where we are today. It was really just to, as a co-op, really just trying to get a service to our membership that we knew they needed. And that funding really got us started on that path. So.
Now, help our audience understand where you guys serve, kind of that Northwest Missouri, kind of where you, between where?
You bet. So our primary electric service area is around St. Joseph, Missouri, up to Maryville, Missouri. So kind of in the extreme northwest corner of the state, basically from the Iowa border. We do have a few meters in Iowa, but basically from Iowa down near Kansas City. And then our our fiber services area is obviously larger. We're, like I said, we have about 10,000 electric meters, 7,500 members. And as I mentioned before, we now have 30,000 broadband subscribers. So we're basically on a member to subscriber basis, we're about 4 times the size now on broadband, which is pretty unique, for an electric co-op in this type of a business. So that our fiber footprint basically goes from the north edge of Kansas City to the Iowa border.
So when you look at your electric business, I mean, it's pretty rural, right? You're like, what, 2.5 meters per mile?
Yes, we're one of the most rural co-ops, if not the most rural in the state of Missouri. So it's, to think we were going to do fiber to the home, was not really a great possibility without some additional funding. And that's, again, why we felt comfortable to get started back with that original ARA grant loan. And since then, we've been fortunate enough we've participated in the Connect America Fund auction, RDOF. We just recently were awarded about $8 million in funding from the state broadband office with some of the ARPA funds, and also through some of our county funds as well, another $1.5 million there. So all in all, we've been able to get about $60 million in funding over the last 10 years to really spur that, to really help us hit those extremely rural markets. And then, as obviously we've done a lot of community builds. We've done about 45 community builds, which that has kind of been another resource for us. Along with the funding, that's been a resource to help us continue to edge out in those extremely rural markets.
Well, I have to imagine that it's so critical that you're able to connect those 45 communities, because as I recall, I think Missouri's getting $1.7 billion from BEAD. Is that right?
That is right. There's a huge, I think Missouri was number 3 on the amount of funding allocated through that process.
So how many co-ops are there in Missouri,
yeah,
and how many of those have launched?
There's going to be a lot of activity in Missouri for sure.
Yeah, how many co-ops are there in Missouri, and how many have launched?
There's about 45 co-ops total in the state, and then around 12 on the distribution side have either announced or are going full bore in projects. There's a couple others that have partnered with some other companies to do services, but still there's fewer than half of the co-ops in the state doing some form of broadband. There's more looking at it all the time, but it's just one of those things that it's we're still not over the line of 50%. So.
Well, it seems crazy with all your success. Why wouldn't every rural electric co-op in Missouri and across the nation, there's like 900 rural electric co-ops, why wouldn't everybody be offering broadband?
And I don't want to speak for other co-ops, there can be a number of reasons. Sometimes it just has to do with perceived competition in the area, management or board preferences. Obviously, we're managed by a board of directors of our membership. So, it's usually a decision of the officers and the board members, ultimately the board members, of whether or not companies get into this business. So, there's, in our area, for example, there's a couple of rural telephone co-ops that have done a good job of bringing fiber to the home. Our board made the decision that we didn't have to provide fiber ourselves to every member because we are so rural. In those areas where they're already getting fiber to the home from a rural telephone co-op, our board has said that, we don't have to overbuild that in those areas, because we really just want to make sure that our membership, the reason we got in this was to just make sure that our members that did not have broadband were able to get it. And that's what we've been able to accomplish through this. And that's been done, again, for those that have been in an area where they've had fiber to the home through another provider, so be it. And we're happy that they have it. So.
That's my favorite thing about rural electric co-ops, Darren, is that it's really about community development. And, every time I visit a general manager, you walk in the restaurant, everybody knows their name. You go to a ball game, everybody knows. You go to church, everybody, so you are about the most accountable person on the planet in your community. Is that right?
You have to be. Everybody has your cell phone, and everybody knows where your office is. So yeah, it's I don't know if it's by choice. No, actually we do. We take a lot of pride in what we do, and a lot of satisfaction. It's even in the areas, even these communities which we do not serve electrically, that's still where our membership goes. We'll go to school, they go to bank, they go to get their groceries, all those, go to church, all those type of things. So we feel our board has given us the opportunity to take more of a regional approach rather than just a co-op approach. And we've really benefited from that because we've connected, all the major healthcare providers in the area. a number of the clinics, schools, again, churches. So many of these that we do not serve electrically, but it's not only benefiting the region, it's benefiting our membership as well, because we've been able to we were the highest cost electric co-op in the state 10 years ago. And right now we've not taken a rate increase since, and we don't project any additional rate increases in the future, at least because of what broadband's been able to bring to the co-op. So.
Well, that's what I hear consistently is, that you can't subsidize the broadband business with your electric business, but you can sure use that revenue from the broadband business to keep your rates low and really benefit your electric side of the house.
That's absolutely right. Plus, we've had the opportunity, and I may have mentioned this to you the last time we spoke, but over the last 5 years, we've been able to give almost $10 million back to our membership through rate discounts, through capital credits, through some other, just some other things we've been able to do, often in December, like a rate discount in those months to just kind of give people some extra money around the holidays. And it's been so well received. So even those members that do not have fiber necessarily from us, maybe they have fiber service from another provider, they're still seeing a benefit as a member. And it took a while for our members to understand that. It took a couple of years, but they've really seen it and really, they love it now. I mean, there's probably as much or more talk at our annual meeting about fiber now than there is electricity. So.
Yeah, it's funny when I talk to RUS, they say that most of their funding, even their electric funding, is getting into fiber from one way or the other, whether it's connecting substations or smart grid modernization and so forth. But let's get into the matching funds for co-ops. So we have matching funds. We have this huge looming thing called letter of credit that really is a big issue for some small and community providers. What advantage does a co-op have with respect to financing?
The good thing, because we're such a heavy infrastructure organization, I mean, we're used to getting long-term loans, taking long-term approaches. We're able to get, we've been fortunate to get very favorable loan packages through both CoBank and CFC, some of the major lenders on the electric co-op side of the house. So that's been a huge benefit to us. And thankfully, building over the last 10 years, we've been able to get a lot of our network in at very low interest rates. Obviously, there's a little bit more interest rate pressure now than there has been, and inflation pressure than we've seen, over the last couple of years. But we have a lot of infrastructure in. We can build cheaper on our existing poles than what you can do on an underground basis, often at about half the cost. For those that are getting into the business, you can use dollars from an electric co-op. Again, we found that offering electric service and offering broadband service is very similar, just the way the networks are set up. And then it's just been a huge success for us, like I said, over that amount of time. And like I said, with the letters of credit, some of the concerns that you brought up early, we're in a favorable position. There's some of those things that if we could change, we would, frankly. I mean, it's not, we don't like the fact of an upfront letter of credit, but with all the different things that you kind of brought up early on, I mean, I think we're in a position, co-ops are in a good position to at least handle some of those challenges that come along with that, with the BEAD requirements.
So explain to me, like you had told me before, like the county can be a co-applicant on the matching funds. How does that work?
So what happened this was during the ARPA process and through the state broadband funds that were allocated in Missouri. We had some of the county commissioners that basically partnered and contributed some money from their county ARPA funds to help with kind of that matching piece. And as much as anything, it showed the interest as an applicant. United Fiber was obviously the applicant, but they signed on that they were supporting the United Fiber build in their counties, and all of them gave some type of monetary donation, some more than others, but some went up to 25%. So that was a huge benefit in the scoring. And I think that's a little bit different. We've been used to the last few years on CAF and RDOF funding that has been more of a bid process, where ARPA gave us a taste, I think, a little bit of what the application process is going to be more like for BEAD. And so it's much more community-based. It's much more locally based as far as working with partners, community benefit plans. There's so many more pieces there than what we saw with CAF and RDOF. So it's a different process. And like I said, we got a taste of that. So I think there's a few more things that'll be coming along with BEAD. But, you know, the thing I will say I'm thankful for in Missouri, I will give a shout out to our state broadband office. They've been very focused on working with providers that are local to the area and that they know, you know, are invested in the areas, whether that's rural telcos, rural electrics, whatever that is. Their history in the state broadband fund allocations was very promising, I think, for what I hope we can expect during BEAD. So.
Well, certainly, I would think, you know, the fact that both the rural electric co-ops and rural telephone cooperatives both have huge impacts in the community and, you know, great track record. But you guys been around for what, 100 years, something like that?
Right. Yeah, 80 plus years, yes.
Yeah. So if you're a rural operator in that community, one, everybody knows you're going to be around for the next 100, 200 years. And two, you guys already have a great track record. So what you're saying is that when you partner with the county, who you already have a great relationship, is they can pull out some capital projects funds or ARPA money or other things to help match and help you guys on your applications.
Absolutely. Just having that conversation with them and getting them involved early in the process has been extremely beneficial. As a matter of fact, one of the counties we've done some projects with them outside of the state funds that they wanted to get service into some areas, and you know, have really built a trust and a partnership with them. And you know, their ultimate goal is to get fiber to their whole county, and we've been fortunate in a lot of these areas through these different, like I said, through that $60 million that we brought into what are mostly high cost areas. There's many of the counties that if we don't serve it, well, telephone co-ops have fiber in it. And some of these counties, we have one county that has just a little over 2,000 people in it, and they now have fiber to the home throughout the whole county. So those are the type of stories that just can't happen without some type of additional funding, utilizing the programs that are available to us to kind of, you know, to get that network out in the areas that would never get it otherwise. So.
Absolutely. So what about other financing sources? So who are your go-to guys for financing?
Yes, I mean, mainly, like I said before, like with CoBank and CFC, they've been great partners. They understand, they've seen the success now of what a number of, not just us, but a number of other rural electric co-ops have done in this market, and how, you know, the take rates and how effective it's been, everything from NPS scores of, you know, of 60, 70, 80, you know, they see the satisfaction and the long-term benefit of, you know, of companies like us providing broadband in these markets. So they've been great partners. Again, like I told you in the past, it's like the other piece we do is these community builds, again, of not only, we look at it somewhat as a funding mechanism there as well. I mean, I know that's sounds a little bit odd, but we look at those balance out our homes per mile. You know, when we can build communities that often don't have any other type of fiber service. Most of those communities didn't have fiber service, and many didn't even have a cable service. It was just low grade DSL. But we see the take rates very consistent, even in communities that are, you know, have cable services and things now. So when we build those areas, we look at that as an offset to those areas that have 2, 3, 4 customers per mile, and it balances that out. So we continue to invest and continue to edge out in those areas where we know people need that service in those extremely rural markets. So
as an infrastructure provider, I mean, so you have great assets, right? Banks love assets. So is there an issue on pledging your electric assets for broadband builds, or how do you leverage those assets when you're?
So I would say most co-ops, when they get into the business, the electric co-op probably guarantees those notes early on. We've gotten to the point now that we built our asset base is near the same on our fiber side now as what it is on the electric side. But getting into the business, that's an absolute, you know, benefit to be able to have the backing of the co-op. It's, you know, it's kind of like when my 18-year-old son wants a car or a credit card, you know, I still have to sign on the line, but it's like that's what got us started. And having those relationships, having that existing infrastructure, yeah, benefits you both from like I said, from not only from a construction standpoint, but from a financing standpoint as well.
All right. Well, great. No, I think that's a perfect analogy, because it's like our children, they've come from a liability to become a huge asset. So it sounds like the broadband business provides great dividends back to the electric business. So let's get into
it's at different stages, I think, too. So I mean, I think the stage of that is important because I think we've been in it for a decade now. We just celebrated our 10 years. So especially early on, that's a critical piece to help kind of springboard and make those investments, that you need to make to build a quality network.
Great. I mean, so it just seems like there's not only the assets you have that you can use as collateral and, leveraging your electric side as that to get going, but also it sounds like you have some cross-pollination of employees and other things.
Right. Yeah, we do. We do time studies and allocate those. We do a study but we do. That's been a lot of the benefit is that there's some certain resources that share easily, like HR and accounting and those type of things, that you're able to kind of offset the cost to both companies, through those type of agreements.
So let's talk about DavisBacon prevailing wage and how that impacts on your match and your financing.
Yeah. So, I mean, we saw that during our first build, through that ARA build, that there was a DavisBacon requirement with that. That does add to the cost, no doubt. So like you mentioned early on, that minimum 25% match, we saw about an additional 20% increase in cost in our area with those DavisBacon requirements back at that time. And I think any company will second, that was back in 2010, 2011, but there will be a project if that wording's still the same or however the final rules shake out. But that's something to keep in mind. And I think with this, I think it's good for companies to partner with someone to help, because we benefited in CAF and RDOF from being part of a consortium that bid. But the bids were pretty straightforward, right? There you get there's more requirements as far as some of the there's the BABA, we've talked about the Buy American, we've talked about these community benefit plans. Again, we got a taste of this through ARPA, and we utilized one of our local regional planning that, and then at us see where those and find a vendor, find someone that can help you through this process, because this is going to be a little bit more different than what we've seen in the past. Again, I would compare it more to like what we've seen previously, like in the Reconnect grants, or with like back with the ARA grants back in 2010.
So, there's a lot of discussion on the chat about, what are the best, most successful approaches to encouraging cities and counties to contribute some ARPA funds to the co-op broadband. And, CFP fits under ARPA. So what are you saying? What's the best approach? Is you just going and saying?
I agree. I mean, that's the first step, is just communication, like it is with most things, right? It's just having the conversation, meeting the right people, getting in front of your county commissions or whatever that structure is, and then seeing what funds they have available. I know all those funds were basically listed that whether if they haven't used some of their funding for other projects, I think it was water, wastewater, all the different things that they could use, that maybe that they. And I worrying with artists for the state of Missouri. It was not just beneficial for the money part; it was beneficial for the cooperation part, kind of leveraging that public-private, partnership to get service into an area. I think it showed the people scoring those different projects a high level of cooperation and a high percentage chance of success when you have the county commission and an.
Darren, you seem to be freezing there on your internet access. So I think it's your Microsoft issue you were having earlier. But
Yeah.
So there's some really good questions in the chat, and one is on the get to these browsing, was on the where is it here? On the Buy America, Build America products. Are you monitoring that? Are you going to be following that legislation and make sure that everybody's compliant?
Definitely. I think that's something we all have to do. That's going to be one other component of this, to make sure that, the vendors you're working with comply with that requirement.
All right. Another really good question is, can you talk about your in-kind contributions for fulfilling the 25% match? Such as waiving fees associated with access to right-of-ways, pole attachments, conduits, easements, other types of infrastructure.
We have never used in-kind contributions personally, but that is a good approach to take.
But Darren, you froze on me, but let me just kind of net out what I've heard from you. So you basically say, from a BEAD perspective, it might disadvantage small providers with the letter of credit and the matching and stuff, but electric co-ops have an advantage because the electric plant is an asset that can help guarantee the letter of credit and financing. It sounds that both sides of the house, both electric and broadband, can co-sign for loans, as well as you could get involved with your county and so forth. And then also, so there's a lot of really good advantages. And then the big kind of benefit, right, of all these, what you're seeing from your broadband business, it really benefits your 7,500 electric members, right? Because that you're able to, I think you gave back $9 million to the electric rate base from the broadband business. You've also been able to build out the 45 communities that would not have got broadband and fiber otherwise. And then, you told me that these 45 communities have 50 to 100 customers per mile versus your electric rate base, which is 1 to 2 customers per mile. So it really helps to balance out your density. And then, also you're able to add, you're 800 to 1,000 broadband customers per month. So it sounds like that your broadband business now is 4 times bigger than electric, but that's going to continue to outpace the electric, really benefiting your rate, your electric members because of keeping their rates low. So again, sorry that your connectivity is an issue, but really appreciate, Darren, you sharing your insights on matching funds for rural electric co-ops and telcos, and the work that you and your team are doing to close our nation's digital equity gap, especially in Northwest Missouri, where 1.7 billion. So even with the work you've done, there's still lots of communities in Missouri that need be connected with fiber. So thanks again for joining us, and look forward to getting together next month on our next episode of Where's the Funding? So we'll see everybody in September.
Thank you, Gary.